try to do something physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual every day. Adds value to my life. Is your business doing the profit margins you want? Think that there's power in that word no, but also power in the clarity of having a vision for yourself.
So I've got a good friend of mine on today, Jordan Drost. He is the owner of Viking Marine in Seneca, South Carolina. Jordan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Born and raised in Rock Hill, South Carolina.
All right.
Played sports all my life. Grew up in the church, and worked my way here for some family things. Started working at Duke
From
Energy.
Rock Hill?
From Rock Hill, yeah.
Duke
so
Energy?
I'm
Okay.
living in Seneca now. And I started working at Duke Energy as, a 19-year-old kid. So I took a real professional job, a real demanding job. And,
Right.
For college, I was going to school as well. So I was working probably 65 to 72 hours a week and trying to do, night classes or day classes.
It's tough.
So I learned how to work, real hard at a younger age because
Put some hours in.
Oh yeah. So missed out on a lot of the party scene, I'll say, for life, but it taught me a lot, learned a lot. So
how'd you go from working at Duke to now you've done pretty well with Viking Marine and created something pretty cool over there. Let's talk about the journey about, how you went from a job, right? Because a lot of people, they listen to this and we talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about business, we talk about being a man and all these things and our struggles on the journey. But how did you go from having a job to being a business owner? Because that's just not an easy thing,
If you backtrack a little bit of high school, in my high school years, my summer times, I worked in Boone, North Carolina. I poured concrete.
Okay.
So I got a taste of entrepreneurship, being, staying with an owner, seeing how he ran a business. I got kind of inspired there to be in business.
Yeah.
But every job that I took, I always had to. I guess I had a ceiling. If you had an idea or if you had input you wanted to implement, depending on the dynamic, it really never got cultivated, accepted, because there's certain cultural norms wherever you go and you work, and it's kind of hard to change what is. So I always had this from an early age sense of being in business for myself. And to be honest, when I moved here, started working at Duke, one of the first things I bought was a boat.
Okay.
Because I met a lot of people, but I never really got invited out. So
what kind of boat did you buy?
It was a 1968 Correct Craft.
Okay.
And
was that all wood boat?
No. So it was probably 4 or 5 years into the fiberglass molds.
Okay.
But this boat needed a ton of work. The very first time I took this boat out, the stringers were rotten. I didn't know. They collapsed. And
really?
Yeah. So within 2 months of ownership, I had to completely redo this thing.
So did you do that yourself?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So did you YouTube University it or?
So YouTube was kind of breaking ground. I YouTubed a lot of things, but what I kind of did was I redid it from the ground up, made it brand new.
Yeah.
And then I put the right motor back in it. I really.
Is that an inboard, outboard, or was that just
a true inboard?
So that was an inboard. Okay.
Yeah. So I did all the motor work myself. Did a majority of the fiberglass work myself.
Was that a V8 boat?
V8 had a Hallman Moody 302 in it.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It was a hot motor it was only a 16-foot boat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got to and I got a lot. My granddad was a huge part of my life as far as woodwork, just working with my hands and
being handy.
Confidence to tear down a motor. Because at a very young age, I was pretty much a nerd. I want to know how and why everything works. And he was a great outlet for me to get that confidence to tear that motor down and rebuild it back.
I mean, it's just parts.
It's just
if it comes apart,
it's just parts.
It'll go back together.
Yeah. So I mean, the start of the business came. I got into sales after Duke. I worked there for 9 years. Got into sales. I did really well.
Well, what kind of sales were you?
So I was doing med sup policies.
Okay,
and
med sup
annuities.
Yeah. Was that door knocking?
No, so it's cold calling. So
Okay.
that requires one day kind of dedicated to, if you've ever cold called, it can be, you've got to learn how to communicate to keep someone's attention and set up a meeting.
All right.
And it's not a lot of opportunity truly, because you may have time for 2 meetings, and one may be in Florence, South Carolina, and one might be in Columbia, and that's one day. And these were very, I would say, intimate conversations, because you're dealing with people who are going into open enrollment, and part of that was value. So all of my life, as far as the sales side and communicating with people, what I guess I learned, the hack that I learned for how to really sell something, was presenting value. And I did that for a little bit less than a year. And I was the number one agent in North and South Carolina with the company I was with.
What was that company?
Physicians Mutual.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So real quick, just touch on that. But in order to learn how to add value in those situations, you had to learn how to be valuable.
Correct.
Right? Like you had to learn from somebody else. You didn't just walk in one day and you're like, hey, all right, I'm going to be the top guy. You had to learn from some other people.
Yeah.
And then you had to practice a lot.
Fail a lot.
Yeah.
Is what I would say. And embracing the failure is pretty much a mirror image to embracing growth.
Sure.
So, it was listening, and not selling, listening to what a consumer wanted on an intimate level, and trying to, essentially what I tell people that work for me now is, don't tell me about the issue. I want you to bring me a solution.
Right.
So if I can be a solution provider to you in any of the world that we live in, I'm going to become valuable to you.
Well, and we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yep.
And all sales is an exchange of information. You have to ask good questions and then being able to solve a problem, which you do through becoming more valuable.
Correct.
It doesn't matter what you do if you sell tables or, do landscaping or sell boats.
Yep.
If people, they usually come to you with a problem.
Correct.
Right? We just think we have to sell them something when really we just have to listen to them.
That's right.
And then come up with a solution to solve it.
Correct.
And then we get to earn a paycheck in the middle.
That's exactly right.
That's the whole journey,
You
the whole thing.
Connecting dots, man.
Yeah.
So from sales, actually after that, I stopped doing that because I was in a relationship, and I was traveling a lot, and that wasn't conducive.
Didn't jive.
Did not jive. So
She wasn't happy.
no, not at all. And so I ended up going local to Seneca, and I got a job with Fastenal.
Okay.
And I was there
So
outside.
Duke, MedSup policies, Fastenal.
Fastenal.
All right, tracking.
And so this is a lot different ballgame, a lot different consumer base as well. It's a lot different monetary gain too. This was a lot less than
Sure.
what I was aspiring for. But I learned so much with interpersonal. I met people every day, had to greet people every day, had to maintain and manage a store essentially, and then I had to handle outside accounts. So I got paid on growth, right? Growth and margin. So I had to learn. I had to go in, make the relationship, and then find out what they needed and provide it to them in a manner that was a corporate level acceptance.
Right.
One of the things we did with Fastenal was implement it's a vending machine program that Fastenal was offering, and this is a huge monetary saver for
Sure.
a lot of companies like Duke Energy or City of Seneca, where you've got a lot of employees reaching into the
Bins.
candy jar, right?
Yeah.
There's no accountability, there's no traceability.
Yeah.
So one of the bigger things I did there was set that up, and once I proved to myself my value, I then started to think about how I could count my money first and go into business. And always been a car guy, always been a boat guy.
Yeah.
Go fast.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I've always
Shiny, fun, loud objects.
Yeah, and I was keen on the shiny.
Yeah.
So I knew that I could make more money. Year 2 in the Fastenal, they offered me a position to be the store manager. Didn't want it. You couldn't pay me to do that
Yeah.
because the internal audits for a nut and a bolt, which is a part of what they sold.
Right.
I just couldn't do
Washers.
it. My brain does not work that way.
5. We got 4.
Yeah.
One's missing.
So it wasn't a good fit, and I took a chance, man. I took a chance on myself to really bet on myself and put my destiny in my hands. And to be honest with you, it started small. It started with cars, cars, and then led into boats. And
Now, were you flipping?
no. I started out with just detailing.
Okay, so you were detailing boats and cars.
Purely detailing, and
Okay.
I brought a new product to market. Traditionally, people were used to a wax.
Yeah.
And a wax has a failure rate that's pretty high.
Yeah.
If you put it in the sun, it fails. Any kind of, and it's positively or negatively charged wax depending on the brand, but it's going to actually draw particulates to it.
Okay.
But it's a short-term solution. At the time, ceramics were coming out.
Yeah.
And ceramics had been proven in the military arena for aeromotive the plane world.
Yeah, aerospace.
Aerospace. It had been proven there, and it was used for like a de-icer. And so it was coming to market commercially, and I signed up, and the results really spoke for themselves.
So you started ceramic coating cars
Yep.
and boats.
Yep. But and the key to the key to a really good ceramic job is all the prep work. You have to know how to truly get the paint to perfection before you treat it, before you seal it, and save those results. So I went to every car lot, every dealership. I started doing. At one time I had 7 employees that were running trade-ins. Every trade-in we got, so we'd go pick up 7 or 8 trade-ins. We'd detail them, and that's how I started. It grew towards the ceramic side. And once, I guess, my results, started to speak before I did, I had a full-fledged detail operation, and that led to the boat sales.
All right, so let's back up real quick. Because there's a couple of skill sets that I want people to pick up on that led to that opportunity. First off, working with Duke Energy back in the beginning.
Yep.
What was that job?
So I started out the concrete background I had.
So concrete.
Yep.
So you were doing
Unit 2 and Unit 3 change out. I was a part of the contractors that were out there.
Okay, so project management and some ski.
I was the laborer, man. I was
holding the things.
I was holding the air hammer. We were busting up on the platform where the generator was pulled out.
Yeah.
I was a laborer. I only got the opportunity because I had some concrete background.
Is that why you glow in the evening? No,
I guess.
Nuclear.
Yeah. But so. I got that opportunity and actually rose. I ended up becoming a supervisor out there, an interim supervisor.
So working with Duke, and then you got some great sales training being in MedSup policy and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then probably some corporate level experience with Fastenal, which is a very different level of things from like being in insurance sales is just run as fast as you can kind of thing.
Yep.
Working for somebody like Fastenal, there's a lot of corporate structure to that.
Correct.
And policies and all those kind of things, and that probably taught you some really good things. And then you went out and you figured out, well, hey, if I take a risk and believe in myself, then I can probably grow into something totally different and do it on my own. But you probably, even in the detailing business, you probably took aspects that you learned and your work ethic and doing the construction stuff at Duke to your sales experience and listening to people to solve a problem in the insurance business. And then probably some of the structure systems and things you took away from Fastenal and seeing how that operated and thinking about inventory and nuts and bolts and the vending machines and all that kind of process where you're like, okay, well, I can build a business with these skills.
Correct.
And obviously that went pretty well because, you've got to be able to do the work, but you've got to have a work ethic too. If you're going to detail 7 cars and you're going to say, hey, call me, I can deliver something. Well, then you've got to be able to, it doesn't matter if it takes 2 hours or 20 hours, you got to show up.
There were many times where we were, one aspect of that was, the trade-ins. The other aspect were, hey, we got 7 new cars that are sold too, and 2 need blank.
Yeah. Which is a great place to be.
It is.
But then you got to service the work.
That's right. So being present, there were plenty of nights I was working till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, dropping cars off at 1 or 2 in the morning, because that was me. That was the end of the promise, right?
Right.
The opportunity came after I beat down the door.
Sure.
I'll never forget the very first car I did. This was a test run, by the way, for one of the dealerships. I knew the car was perfect, and the guy went around the car.
What kind of car was it?
Chevrolet.
Okay.
It was
anything cool?
Nothing crazy. Well, the guy critiqued the car. He went around. Everything was good. He opened the gas cap.
Oh no.
We missed the gas cap.
Oh man.
So what that did for my humility was there's always something to learn.
Right.
And you're never gonna know everything.
Well, and what's interesting about men in business, when you're kind of a type A driven individual, is that pride wants to kick in. And it does for a while.
It does.
You're like, man, I'm all that in a box of rocks or bag of chips or whatever. And like, I got it all figured out. I'm the man.
Yep.
But you know what I've always learned? There's always somebody smarter, somebody
right.
stronger, somebody faster, somebody richer. So there's always somebody where you can go, you know what, I can learn from that guy. But when you get to that place with humility, you really can start to shift in your life. And those people will come around you and they'll be like, hey, man, let me help you out with this. Let me help you out with this. Like I have found that a lot of people that are smarter or better, or whatever it may be than me, they've always been willing to help if I listen.
Yeah.
And so I've got to throw my pride out the window and be like, hey, man, you know what? I'm in a place where I need some help.
That's right. I agree. And I think that's, a transitional stage that you go through when you get into entrepreneurship, and then you learn you can scale things, right? So the more you scale, the more you manage, the more responsibility you have.
Right.
And the more stress you deal with.
Sure, yeah. And more doesn't just mean easier.
Yeah.
People think that. They're like, oh, man, one of the things I always laugh when I'm working with people on is they think more makes it better.
No.
More clients, more money, more stuff, more things. And I'm like, let me tell you, if you're stressed where you're at,
Yeah.
you're going to be more stressed with more stuff.
That's right.
And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, you can't handle what you got. Like, you're crazy. Your relationship with your wife is terrible. Like,
Yeah.
you don't know where your kids' ball games are. Like, you're running ragged, and you want to make more money with more clients. Won't help. We got to get better.
If you can, and that's kind of one of the things that I would say that's helped me, because I've scaled something and became, we got voted the best dealership in town. Within 3 years of selling new units, a huge accomplishment for us. And that, I want to thank every customer that's, shopped with us or worked with us, because that is direct feedback from them. And one thing I can tell you, without those customers, I would never have grown or became anything. So that's one of for anybody who is, in that mind space of becoming an entrepreneur, it's all customer service.
Sure. You can't do anything without them.
No.
Doesn't matter how great of a product you have or how awesome or amazing or whatever it may be. A lot of people, they think that is what will grow the business, but it's not. It's the people. It's the relationships. I've seen some people, they've created a business and for a product or a service that nobody wants. And I've seen people struggle with that. And it really is about finding a need in the marketplace and using our ears to hear if we can solve a problem, and then being valuable enough and having the skill set or talents to be able to solve the problem and deliver it, whether it's detailing cars. You got to show up 2 o'clock in the morning, to listening to somebody and meeting them in their living room and serving, helping them service a MedLife policy, right? Supplement or whatever. To delivering a $250,000 boat.
That's right.
Right. It's the same process.
For me, it's identical.
Sure.
And one of the wild things too is in that dynamic, some of your customers are incredibly giving in that relationship, because I've met some lifetime friends through customers. So the networking of the ceramic side through the boat interaction side or the detailing side, I've got lifetime friends from that that have been a resource that have essentially poured into me. When I've had struggles, right? When I've dealt with letdowns in business, the pursuit, right? I love the pursuit. I love the sell. I love that engagement, and I love to win. And I usually figure that out pretty quickly. But when I've had stress or troubles in that, I've been able to reach out to some close friends, and they've got me right back on track. And I'm the type that it's hard for me to listen to someone unless they're more successful than me. And I'm very thankful for those relationships. So
it's really important to pay attention to who you surround yourself with.
100%.
And then also, when people smarter than you, wealthier than you, stronger than you, whatever it may be, if they have some level up in life, again, having that humility to listen to them. I know a lot of people who, and I've gotten to be around some really cool people, right? I think we both have. And those people will give you advice.
Correct.
Right? They'll be like, hey, if you could just do this or tweak this thing, you'd go here. I know a lot of people, they question it. They're like, well, I don't know, man. I saw this TikTok and this guy said that. He's like, listen, this guy is smarter than you, done it, been there for 20 years. You should listen. Right. And so I tell people, like, when I get an opportunity to get advice from people, I'm like, all right, let me get out my notepad. Like, what do you got?
Well, it's free, and I think when the source is genuine, you have to pay attention to it.
But it'll help you level up. Like, you just gained an exponential, like, it's a 10x factor. Right. Instead of addition, that's when multiplication comes into place. When you can take other people's wisdom, knowledge, experiences, and failures, and they give you some, and they're like, hey, man, you got to do this, or you shouldn't be doing that, or you shouldn't be paying attention to this, or hey, man, you don't need to dabble in that. It's dangerous.
Right.
It's like, you know what? Maybe I should listen. But when we're young, we're like, man, what are you talking about? I need to do all. I need to go figure it out. We're young and dumb.
We're young, dumb, and we're eager. I think because when I was young, I had it all figured out.
Sure, of course.
And then I realized how much I didn't as soon as I took a real job. The common sense stuff, like what you think you know versus when you get thrown into an environment where you're around a bunch of guys that have had 25 years of a trade skill, and you don't know what you're doing.
Anything.
Yeah, it's very humbling. So,
I remember I had an experience just like that. So I was in commercial construction. I did real well in college. I was pretty sharp, so I thought, scored real well, did well in all this stuff, and I thought I was great. Got a great job offer with a great company, and I was like, man, I got it all figured out. I am the project manager. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, I was probably 21 or something like that. I had no in real life experience. Well, as you know, in construction, like a lot of those guys are pretty rough.
Oh yeah.
And when they do have 20, 30 years in the field, like they know they're not nice. You know,
They don't have time for excuses.
yeah, they don't have time for any of that kind of stuff. And I remember one day, my boss, you know, and his name was Tim. He'd been at this for I don't know how many years, but his skin looked like leather. He drank dirt for coffee and smoked like a freight train.
Yeah.
And so on the job this day, we didn't really know what we had going on or whatever. And I felt like I had an opinion to have, right? And that did not work out very well.
Voice.
I think I might have cried.
Yeah.
You know what I don't even remember exactly what he said, but it was full of 4-letter words and like you young this and that, you think you know, and I really didn't know anything, and I was like, you know, I had to have a moment.
Yeah.
Because I mean I thought, well, what are you talking about? What do you know? And I had to either have a bad attitude, or I could be like, you know, he probably is smarter than me. Maybe I should listen. You know,
Sometimes receiving that is it
kind of a wake up moment.
Oh
you know?
yeah, and it's hard. It's hard to receive sometimes when your mind is telling you that you're right about everything all the time. But I think once you get to this breaking point of allowing that information to come to you and not being hypercritical of it.
Yeah.
Hey, he doesn't know how to say it in a nice way, but he's trying to help me. Once you can see that, that's kind of like a father-son dynamic or a coaching dynamic.
Most people want you to do well.
That's right.
You know, he didn't say that. I mean, I was just being annoying is what it was. He's like, can you just shut up? You know, you don't know everything.
Right.
And it wasn't like he was out to get me or any ill will, but it was a moment.
Yeah.
And we get to have those in life a lot of times. Talking about taking advice from other people. And that's one of the things I would encourage a lot of younger business guys and entrepreneurs. When somebody comes along, not some TikTok person or some magical person on the internet, but when somebody comes along who really has done something.
Right.
And you admire that in life, whether it's they've built a boat dealership or they've got airplanes or they've got something in life that you think, man, I would like to figure that out in my life.
Yeah.
And they're willing to sit down with you and give you advice. Whatever they say, if they tell you you suck, take it.
Yeah.
Okay? Take it to heart. Be like, okay, why? You
Yeah.
know?
Oh yeah.
Because they want to see you do well.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes a little bit of tough love.
Tough love is good, and I think tough love is, you know, depending on where it is, you have to be open to receive it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, whether it's a customer or whether it's a friend who's trying to elevate you, it's either going to be it's going to be received or they're going to keep you stagnant and enable your failure.
Well, think about it. Even with that gas cap, right?
It never happened again.
Yeah. You thought to yourself, man, and in that moment, you're probably like, golly, that son of a gun, he's wrong.
I learned. I did not get that contract that week. And that was just purely an opportunity. I think about 2 months had passed, and this was very beginning stages of, you know, my fears are, hey, how do I pay rent?
Right.
How do I pay rent? How do I pay payroll?
You didn't get the contract because of gas cap.
Yeah. So maybe 2 months later, I get a phone call. We want you for everything.
Yeah.
And that opened the floodgates, and it just allowed for the scale of the business. And as it scaled, our responsibility, our standard had to grow with that scale. And because some customers are coming after you to come after you.
Sure. There's always going to be somebody that, you know.
Learning how to deal with that. I had to flush a lot of pride down the toilet sometimes to be critiqued.
Sure.
You know, to be leveled. And the one thing I've always done and I always do is if I'm not happy with the product and I didn't see the finished product before it went out, we're gonna make it right.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you lose opportunities. I'll never forget. I went to quote a boat and I was in a truck that had a small trans leak. Beautiful home, probably $7 million home. And the guy had like 6 cars in a boat for me. This is probably $30,000 worth of work for me to make money on. And did the quote, got the showing on the cars, great conversation, and me and him are hitting it off, and he saw the transmission leak in the driveway.
Staying in that contract.
Cussed me for everything I was worth, and I was like, wow. So was that God stepping in and preventing me from touching a car?
Maybe.
You know, but it helped.
But
me.
on the flip side, when you're in the detail, if that's your business, attention to detail matters.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily what you drove. You could have drove a 1985 Honda Civic, but if it was in mint shape, he'd been like, "All right, hey, he's got it." You know? He's got it together. So let's talk real quick. How did you go from detailing cars to a boat dealership? Because that's a pretty
It's a big jump.
big jump.
I would say it was so a lot of customers got referred to us for total restoration work.
Yeah.
And so you've got a boat that's heavily oxidized.
Yeah.
That boat needs a lot of TLC before said dealer can sell it.
Gotcha.
I found a niche
Found
right
a little
there.
opportunity there.
Oh yeah, because I was very good at communicating and explaining what we were doing, and then I had a lot that was suitable for reselling.
Yeah.
So initially they came to me for the restoration and prep work, and they said, Jordan, why don't you try to sell it? And that grew into something else.
Kind of turned into a whole animal.
Oh, it did, and we became known for that. I mean, we have relationships with Marine Max and a couple other dealers, big dealers that send us boats that are outside of their parameters for resale, and those relationships that have been built continue to feed us opportunity.
Sure.
And we just worked our tails off for those customers and tried to I called it, let me help maximize your return.
Yeah.
Because if you're willing to put a little bit of money into the boat to restore it,
You're gonna get a lot more out of it.
It's gonna show new. And if you let me represent it for you, I'm gonna give you $4 or $5 grand more than the guy down the road.
Right.
And that grew and that grew and that grew and that grew. And I'll be honest with you, I learned that dynamic there. It taught me so much because these weren't the best boats, brother.
Right.
They've
been sitting under a tree somewhere for a while.
It helped me with, the mechanical aspect, which I'm pretty good at mechanical.
Yeah.
But I had to figure a lot of things out on the fly. I was embarrassed, a couple times on the water.
Yeah. Boat quits.
That don't happen anymore. So a lot of the systems that I've implemented or the things that we do now came from a lot of failures.
Sure.
In selling kind of less than super nice boats.
So that's the thing is people see what you do now, right? And you sell really nice boats.
Yep.
Right. I mean, $100,000 boats to $250,000. What's the most expensive boat you ever sold?
600.
$600,000 boat. All right. So you're selling really nice boats.
Yep.
This ain't John boats from 1950.
No.
But here's what I want people to realize: you've got to start somewhere. You didn't start here.
No.
You wound up here by going through a very painful journey. What
I tell people,
a lot of frustration.
Every bit of growth has been allowed by God.
Amen to that.
So,
but it required a lot of pain and frustration and navigating. And because how many times did you want to quit when you got a boat on the water? And it would die. When you were like, man, you know what? I don't know about this whole thing.
I don't know if so. I will say that I never had any desire to quit.
Okay.
I've been embarrassed, really hot, really mad, really aggravated. Choice words.
Yeah.
Get out
the hammer.
But in that failure, man, I always looked at it as an opportunity for me to grow. I don't know if I looked at it that way.
Yeah.
But I made for sure that didn't happen again.
Right.
And so from Duke Energy procedures, I would implement a procedure. We're gonna do a pre-sale on this boat. So, like right now, our guys, if we have a demo set up, I say, hey, we're gonna go run that boat prior to.
Sure.
We're gonna go vet and test this boat because boats are boats, man. Boats, they tear up just sitting.
Sure. Radios, lights,
any little
speakers.
thing.
Yeah.
So it's one of the systems is getting out on that boat, going and verifying, going and feeling confident that this thing is going to show as you described, because that can hinder or kick out a sale.
They may be like, I'm out. Never mind.
100%.
Yeah.
So
you got somebody that flies to town to buy a $200,000 ski boat, and something's off.
Yep.
That's not cool.
Just happened. We just sold an Nautique. It's probably 175, or actually I think it was 193 new.
Yeah.
One of my good friend's boats, and we sold that boat and he flew in, stayed here, went out on the boat, and then flew back home. 2 weeks later, delivered it to Pennsylvania. So we actually just sold a boat to South America 3 weeks ago. Our customer base and dynamic is not local.
Yeah.
And what I've seen in the market or the industry is when, say you've got 100 fish in the pond, and now you got 30 fish in the pond, you still got to go hunt.
Go find some fish.
You got to go hunt.
Yeah.
You got to hunt the buyer. So it's a constant evolution on you have to continually evolve.
Yeah.
To find the same success.
That's what I tell people all the time. Everything is always changing.
Yep.
Right? You can figure out how to do it, and that may last a while.
Yeah.
But then something's going to shift. And that doesn't matter what business you're in, whether you're in grading, whether that's interest rates, whether that's mortgages, whether that's real estate, whether that's boat. Things are always shifting,
Yep.
right? And so as entrepreneurs, we've got to figure out and be willing to endure that process, but
Right.
also be aware enough of our own self and humble enough to recognize that things do always change.
Yep.
And a lot of people, they get frustrated. They're like, man, I just implemented this, 90 days ago or 6 months ago, and it worked great, but now this isn't working at all. Well, something probably shifted.
Right.
I heard something one time about, and I can't remember if it was a podcast, but it was a real successful guy. It might have been in a book. And he was talking about really successful entrepreneurs they're always willing to change.
Yep.
Right? They don't have anything set in stone. It's like,
Correct.
okay, like maybe systems and that kind of stuff are standards, but as far as the way that they run their business or, pursue clients or do marketing or shift with products and that kind of stuff, you got to be willing to do what the market dictates. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter.
You just said it. What the market dictates everything you do.
Right.
It truly does, and I think when you have a pulse on the market, you can
Right.
better project on what changes need to be made. Some of it's trial by fire. Some of it's
Well,
purely
that's that failure piece.
100%.
Where you're like, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I've made bad ideas, and you got to recognize them.
Yep.
Do you know people that stay in their own bad ideas and they end up really almost going out of business or going out of business?
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen that happen to people.
Some of my bad ideas were, marketing.
Sure.
Because I was, this comes from, just the way I am, I guess. I never had to spend any money on advertising or marketing.
Yeah.
And I had my idea was I'm going to plant seeds and that crop's going to grow.
Yeah.
That organic growth is far, if you have an Instagram account with 200,000 followers, but 195,000 are bots, what do you really have? You got
Right.
5,000 organic followers. Well, same. If I reach 200,000 potential buyers, but there's only 30 fish in that 200,000, I
You
might.
only got 30 fish.
That's right. So, I've learned there, spent quite a few dollars on
Sure.
some marketing campaigns that I was, and credit to the guys that sold me on it. They had me hyped up and
Sure.
believing it. But one thing I can tell
Those
you,
marketing guys.
I'm just saying they got me. But for me, the way I move, organic growth has always been the best.
Sure.
So
building relationships, I have somebody that I got some mentoring from, and they told me that if you want to build a recession-resistant business, you build relationships.
amen.
And so marketing and relationships both have their place. They're both necessary.
Yep.
But a lot of people, they think that they can do all marketing and no relationship building. And even the marketing you do, you still have to do follow-up, which leads to a relationship.
Exactly.
There's no hands-off, like, let me just go hire this company and pray that it turns out and sit at home and get all the leads coming in that I can. That just doesn't work that way. You've still got to put in the time. They're following up with the leads and
Conversion.
There's a whole process to that whole thing. And a lot of people, too, that's what they think. They get sold on something. I've seen people do that where they're like, man, I bought this course or I bought this marketing company and they're going to do all this. And I'm like, yeah, that's great and all. You do need a website and you need a few things, but what's the deliverables? Like at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, you've got to like look at the return, look at the potential revenue
Yep.
that's going to generate not just gross revenue, but net revenue.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it don't matter if you do $50 million a year gross and if you do $50 million, you have no net.
We just moved to a lot larger location, and overhead is a lot more, and that's so real. That's one of the challenges I'm facing right now.
Sure.
We have,
It's interesting, isn't it?
in a bad economy, we've doubled.
Yeah.
But we don't really see it right now.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that is. God's just like, hey, here's another challenge.
Well, and it's a learning opportunity too,
Yeah.
right? To again pay attention to things maybe you didn't recognize before.
Yep.
And if people don't know what gross and net are, I had a guy on last month on a podcast talking about accounting and all that kind of stuff. It was a great episode. While we're talking about that, though, like where can people find you? What's the Facebook, Instagram, website, all that stuff?
VikingMarineLLC.com is going to be our website, and then Viking Marine on Facebook. If you look that up, that should pull up, and then Instagram should be Jordan
If
Dross.
not, you need to fire that marketing company you hired.
Yeah. Just look.
I know
look
of
up,
another one.
Look up Viking Marine. Viking Marine. Go to Google too. We're the highest and most rated dealer
Okay.
around. So
And what all brands? I mean, you carry some pretty cool brands, and he has cool boats. Like I like to follow the Facebook page because I like to look at the boats. Sometimes you'll post stuff that people traded in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that twin engine cigarette style boat.
Oh, yeah.
I need that in my life.
So
My wife disagrees, but I'm like, twin engine, straight pipes out the back, big blocks.
yeah. So we actually carry 2 center console lines, Sea Chaser and then Sea Fox. Sea Fox is based out of Monk's Corner, right around Charleston. We carry Montera, which is a new style boat. It's like a 2-for-1. It's called a surf ball. It's just If you think about a tri-tune layout, that's what you get for the top deck. Below deck is an aluminum hull boat, which is a lot more rigid, a lot stronger, but it's an inboard. So it's a 2-for-1. You've got a tri-tune that for creature comforts and space, but you also have a pretty phenomenal surf wave.
That's pretty cool.
So, and we carry, for our surf lineup, the fourth brand we carry is MB, which is the last of the family-owned and family-built surf boats. And their lineage goes back about 45 years. Mike Brendel started that out. It is, I think, well, from what I've seen, one of the better, stronger built boats as far as quality, QC, stuff like that. And then ease of use. Within a minute and a half, your boat's fully loaded and you're surfing. And it's within a minute and a half, it's fully empty. And you're talking about 5,200 pounds of ballast. That's a lot. Our wave is number one to, depending on who's voting, number 1 to number 3 in the world. So when those two kind of blend, you've got the Montera, and then you've got a true dedicated surf boat. Yeah. We're happy with both of them. It's kind of a risk, but so is business taking on Montera. Sure. But
I think, but cool.
It's different.
I think there's a market for that.
The demographic in our area, you've got a lot of middle to older aged lake goers that are looking for a solution.
Sure.
I mean, 2 to 1, and you get 2 boats in one. So we like it. It's a challenge. When we took on MB. MB was a challenge because there wasn't really any East Coast representation. If you go from Texas over to California, everybody knows that brand. We took it on. It's one of the brands we could get at the time, and it's been phenomenal. It takes a little more sell because you have to tell the story because it doesn't have the brand impact as certain like Malibu or Mastercraft, Supra. They have more brand awareness, but I mean, that's the challenge is just a story of my whole business entrepreneurship.
Sure.
Here's your opportunity.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. What can you do with it?
Hope you're enjoying the podcast. We want to give a shout out to our sponsor, The Acquisition CEO. If you're curious about buying or selling a business, hit him up at the link below, theacquisitionceo.com. Also, give him a follow on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And now back to the podcast. Thanks.
Let's talk about some of the other things we came here to talk about. I love talking about people's entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial journey, talking about just the story behind that because, again, people see they're like, oh, man, look at him. He's got all these cool boats. He's got this marina. He's got all this stuff. It's great. They don't know the struggle it took to get there. But let's talk about some of the challenges that you and I talk about sometimes, the addictions, the problems, the things that we face as men in the world, just like – I think if you're wired a certain way, you're prone to being good at sales and you're prone to addiction.
Yep.
Like they somehow go hand in hand. I don't know why that is.
I think it's I would say I'd almost mirror. I'm addicted to going fast.
Yeah.
Fast cars.
Yeah. Me too.
The sale is very similar.
Yeah.
Right? And then drugs can be similar.
Yeah. The hype of it.
My drug of choice was always cocaine.
Yeah.
And I did not have the college life. I did not have that experience. I was always working. And when I found myself in a place to where things were going really good, I actually substituted that for friends.
I got you.
In the friend circle, in the friend group, it wasn't a problem. It was a fun social thing. But I think it also brought out, struggles that I was kind of masking in myself, like depression. Things look great from afar, but internally the house is falling apart because I've got business figured out. I don't have my relationship with Christ figured out, and I don't have a good home space figured out.
Yeah.
So I ended up turning to, I struggled with it twice in my life. I turned to cocaine, and if I would this is what I would do. I had a pretty disciplined approach to it.
Right. You were disciplined in my bad habits.
Yeah, 100%.
I think everybody does.
I'd make plans.
You get that rhythm.
Yeah, I'd make plans with close friends, and I almost expect for something to fall through.
Yeah.
And I'm not I've got a small circle.
Sure.
And if it fell through, I'd call.
Yeah.
And I'd get that fix. And, for me, it was such a dangerous thing to even engage in.
Sure.
And
it's pretty high power.
Well, it's the reason I got away from it the first time was impact on work. I just said, hey, I can't afford to be out the next day, because I would consume it. I'd get it and I'd do it all night. I'd get it till it was gone. And
Because you couldn't think you could get enough.
yeah. I mean, it was with cocaine. You start out and you just keep going until it's over. So, but yeah, I mean, it's incredibly humbling what that drug can do. But for men, it's not easy to let anybody know.
Sure. You'd be like, hey, I got a problem. It's that pride thing.
Well, it's like wearing two masks, right?
Sure.
You have a mask for work. Everything's got to be on
Professional.
The up and up. That's right.
Yeah.
And
keep that job.
If any man, any customer of any kind of credibility, I would not even credibility, but most customers that I've ran into are self-made and successful, and they can sense something's going on. They 100% can read into that, but you can't show that.
Right.
So I had he's a friend and unbelievable person. He asked me one time. He said, "Hey, are you all right?" And I had a chance. That was the only time somebody was
really ask you.
And this guy, this guy, he is probably one of the wealthiest people I know.
Yeah.
And but that has nothing to do with it.
But he's probably experienced it.
Yeah. The human being he has been to me has been nothing but beneficial, and he reached out to me, so that was kind of an eye opener, and I let it go for probably a year and a half, refocused, retooled, and I got back into it again. You know, I got to this. My thing was that I was trying to fill a hole.
Yep.
Right. And whether it's looking at porn, right? For guys, I mean, for me, porn was a safe outlet for.
Sure. It's an easy one.
Well,
it's not going to kill you.
I don't have
supposedly.
I don't have to worry about
going to jail.
Well, yeah. I didn't want to worry about getting a girl pregnant.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get attached to people that I don't want to be attached to. Just a lot of.
Was it kind of an easy out?
It was a super easy out, but again, when you use that and you use that for so long, the problem with porn is no different than I think a lot of drugs.
It gets worse and worse and worse.
These boundaries.
That dopamine hit.
That's right. You have to look at more. You have to see more for you to have the same effect. No different than Coke.
Yeah. You're seeking that high.
Yep. Yeah. So that combination can desensitize you.
Yes.
And desensitize relationships like that you may be presented with.
You kind of become numb.
That's right. Well, I mean, I can tell you right now, God put an amazing gal in my life recently, and I'm having to learn how to receive love.
Sure.
I'm having to learn how to, the intimacy is, I've just been so desensitized to what it's like to have a real relationship.
To be engaged.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would just say, for any person that may see this that is struggling, don't be ashamed of it.
Sure.
And it's still, like, I can say that, I've had trouble with it, but the reaching out process to get help, I would take whatever measure you can to do it so it doesn't desensitize you so much so that you have trouble even having a real relationship.
Yeah.
Or risking, a business, or like, if I'd have gotten caught with drugs, what would that have done?
What would that look like?
Oh my gosh, what would that have just done? For my customer base and things like that. So it's not worth it.
It's not what you want to be Googled for.
No, it's not. And it's one of those things that I think that if we could shine light on to any of those two topics, I think it could really affect the outcome of people's lives.
Well, and that's even biblical. God calls us out of our grave, out of the darkness where our sin exists, to shine light on it, right? Because it exposes it.
Yeah.
And I can understand that. Like, asking for help is hard, but it's critical to
It
go.
is.
When you start to realize you kind of have a problem, and other people start to realize you have a problem, and somebody mentions that to you, and that really kind of hits you a little bit crossways, it's okay to raise your hand and be like, you know what, I got a problem. And again, what you'll find, like even talking about mentors and coaches earlier, like people who've done better than you, most of those people have had struggles in their life, almost all of them. And so when you raise your hand and you're like, hey man, I got a problem, what you'll find is people will connect with you. People who actually really, really care, people who have had those issues, and they'll be like, hey man, you think they're gonna be like loser, right?
Yeah.
That's what you think.
Yeah.
But what really happens is that, hey, bro, I hear you, man. Been there, been
Yeah.
down that road. Here's what I went through. Here's what we went through. Here's how I navigated that in life.
Right.
And you touched on something really critical too. I think even that seeking that hype, that thrill, that chase, right? Whatever it is, whether it's drugs, porn, alcohol, that high, sales, entrepreneurship, we're trying to feel something inside of ourselves.
That's right.
That we never really get to. We try. It's dangerous almost because you'll kind of start to try everything.
Yeah.
Right? You're like,
Yeah.
man, that really didn't. That was good, but it wasn't good enough. That was good. That wasn't good enough. I need to try this. I need to do more.
Yeah.
And we start to think that more of something will fill it, and then eventually you wake up and you're like, you're like,
Your life's ruined.
what am I doing?
Yeah.
How did I get here? And you start to think about those things like, what if I do get pulled over after drinking during the morning at
Yeah.
a business meeting? What if I do get pulled over? Maybe I'm a little high still. What if I get pulled over with these drugs in my car and they got a drug? What if I get pulled over with these open containers down in my floorboard? Like,
Yeah.
you start to think, wow, this could go bad.
Oh yeah.
And for me, one of the things I started thinking about is similar thing. I think God sends people. I always pray that God sends the people to encourage me, to mentor to me, to call me out, to help me, to navigate
Yeah.
personally and in business and all that kind of stuff, because God will send people like that. And it kind of hits you funny. You're like, hey, man, you all right? And you're like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
That's what you want to say. But you're like, yeah, man, I'm good. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But deep down inside of yourself.
Yeah.
But then again, God will send somebody else. Be like, hey, man, you all right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, I hear you, Lord. And God starts to knock. I could hear it in my own life.
Right.
Where God was like, hey, bro, I did not make you for this.
Right.
This is not where I made you to hang out.
Yeah.
And I started to think for myself, I was like, when I was a kid, if I saw what I was doing in life, was that what I dreamed of, or was that not?
Right.
And it's like, no, when I was a kid, I'm not building a life that I really dreamed of.
Right.
And really it's not in alignment with who God made me to be. And what I found is people wanted to help me through that. And I'm thankful for those people.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for the people that, I remember somebody said it to me one day, kind of when it first triggered me. They were like, man, you're like a high functioning alcoholic. And I was like, maybe I am,
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, I had never heard that
Right.
to myself,
Yeah.
And it really hit me crossways. And I was like, no, I'm not. And then I was like, well, I do drink a case of beer every day plus some more. And I mean, I've always struggled with this. It's been a part of my life forever.
Yeah.
And I really started thinking, I think they might be right. And then, I had to have, but same thing. That unpacked so many other things in my life.
Yeah.
Depression,
Yeah.
pride, what I thought was important, just my relationship with God, which was non-existent.
Yep.
So many broken things, and I struggled with that too. I didn't really want to come to terms with it
Yep.
because that meant I had to unpack everything
You got to
else.
face it.
You do, and that's tough. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
That is a hard road to hoe. I'm thankful for my wife and that whole journey,
Yeah.
because she hung in there with me through all that chaos.
I'm familiar with that. So I think one of the reasons why I never really got into alcohol was I've got a family full of alcoholics.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
I
You're
said
like, "That's a bad idea."
I'll go this way.
Yeah.
And
alcohol's bad for it. Cocaine's okay though.
yeah,
You know?
well, it's it's glamorized. As a kid watching movies, Miami Vice or
Sure, some of those heroes, Scarface.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole thing.
It's super glamorized because you got money, you got the women, you got the cars,
Got boats and cars. Yeah.
boats, cars, but yeah. So one of the things you just hit on was unpacking everything, and then finding, or for me at least, is finding peace. Finding peace in who you are. Like
Yeah.
you find that through Christ, but you can God's going to put people in your life too that let you know it's all right.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things about the relationship I've started was one of the first things, like you said, people are going to call you out. She's like, you don't have to prove anything to me. She was like, stop. She interrupted him. She's like, stop. You stop trying to impress me right now. So it was, for me, it was a big, for me, that small little
Yeah.
call out was, what am I doing? Right? I'm trying to sell myself almost.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like, she's calmed the waters, and I can look inside myself, and I've got nothing to prove anymore. And I need to build, I need to build with Christ, and I need to build with inside of everybody I get a chance to interact with.
Sure.
I want to make sure my impact is positive and it's beneficial for them. So my role from being the guy that did everything in business went from that to now a coaching and mentor kind of position.
Yeah.
And without Christ and that guidance, there's no way I'd be here.
Yeah, and I think it really boils down to we have a soul,
Yep.
and we don't pay it any attention.
Yeah.
Right. Business is easy. Like it's
It is.
great. Hey,
In
look,
the-
let's
in
go
the
make
scheme
money.
of things,
Let's do
yeah.
all. That's okay. Great. That looks good.
Yeah.
Even being in shape, we
Yeah.
can find an idol and an identity.
Yeah.
Oh man, look at this. Look at my stuff. Look at my cars. Look at my boat. Look at this. Look at me. But really, deep down inside, we're just so lonely and broken because our soul piece, we're not watering it.
That's right.
And our soul is thirsty. And God's like, hey man, come check this out.
Yep.
And a lot of people, they may think that seems wild, but what I really have boiled, I call it biblical alignment down to,
Yep.
is like God calls us to do good things where we are. God wants us to do well. God wants us to think good, healthy thoughts. Philippians 4:8 talks about what biblical thoughts are. One of the things I think about is if I get to the end of the day and God's like, hey, bro, let's audit your thoughts today, which lead to your words and your choices. Are they in alignment with my word?
Right.
And Philippians 4:8 is a good place to check that out. But like, you can do that. You can simply sit down at the end of the day and you go, okay, were my thoughts, words, and actions in alignment with who God made me to be today?
Right.
And doing that simple accounting process, you're like, it's either yes or no. You know, it's not like maybe, kind of, sort of. Well, okay, well, that's a no. And then, okay, when I wake up tomorrow, what do I need to do? What do I need to implement? Who do I need to say yes to? Or who do I need to say no to? What do I need to say no to? So that becomes a part of my life. And I do that through meditation, prayer, and journaling and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I call it sharpening my sword and strengthening my shield. But
Right.
for so long in my life, I didn't do any of that. I didn't know who God made me to be. I never studied the Word.
Right.
I didn't really know anything about it. Went to church, checked the box,
Yeah.
got dressed up decent.
Felt good about it.
Yeah, everybody. Oh man, yeah, he's going to church. He's saved. He's good.
Yeah.
Right. But meanwhile, on the inside, chaos.
Correct. Yeah.
Like a hurricane. But I am super thankful for the people that came along and asked me some similar questions, like, "Hey man, you all right?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
Falling apart.
"Yeah, I'm good, man."
Yeah, it's hard. And as a guy, and I think when you have the mentality to win, basically,
You don't want anybody to know.
that's a breach in your armor.
Sure. Yeah, you feel weak.
100%.
But I tell you what's funny about it is you actually are weak until you recognize that, because that is a weakness inside of yourself, right?
Amen.
And so when you can overcome that, when you strengthen your soul,
Yep.
your mind, body, and soul, when you strengthen those things and your faith through who God made you to be, then you become strong. We think like we don't want to have that open in our lives,
Right.
but when we throw all that pride out the window and we're like, hey, look, I'm an open box, I'm a sinner, I got problems, I got pride issues.
Yeah.
Let's pick this whole thing apart.
Right.
Then that's like rebuilding the foundation. That's
Amen.
like concrete,
Yeah.
But you're right. Like we want everybody to be like, oh man, he's got it all figured out. It looks good. He's happily married. All the stuff's good. Everything's good. Check all the boxes. And and that's why I love sharing this type of stuff
Yeah.
on the podcast, because a lot of people hurt. A lot of men, they're out there living life, and I've been there driving down the road so empty, where it's like, what am I doing? And you can have money, you can have stuff,
It doesn't matter.
you can have a cool truck, you can have a cool boat, you can have a cool house, you can have whatever,
Right.
but you still drive down the road and you're like, I am lonely and I am empty and I'm miserable. So if you're listening to this, raise your hand. Be like, hey, guess what? I got problems. Because you know what? Everybody's going to be in alignment with it. They're going to be like, hey, bro, guess what? I got problems too.
Yep.
And I tell you what's funny is, and you kind of touched on it, a lot of the really successful people I know, they went through that in life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it's so when you're sought after by Christ,
Yeah.
you're equally, if not more, sought after and pursued by Satan.
Sure.
So if you've got something to give for Christ and His kingdom,
Yeah. Satan's coming.
he's in hot pursuit.
Yeah.
And those temptations, doesn't matter really what they are, whether they're women or money or gambling or drugs or whatever it may be, they're always going to come at you. And they're going to come at you hard and heavy when you're, are about to maybe reach a pinnacle or a breakthrough for the platform of Christ. So when you get, I love right now what I'm seeing in sports and UFC, these guys who are faith-based, first things they're saying, they're giving their credit to Christ. With some pushback. I remember Joe Rogan kind of said, "No, we're not going to talk about this," and they all make a point to speak about it. But it's really whether you get elevated to a platform of heights that most people don't see, or if it's interpersonal and day to day.
Yeah.
Your ability to communicate your belief, your faith in Christ. I think that is the most powerful thing we'll ever be able to do.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree. And I see kind of, I think there's a movement, actually. You see in a lot of men, probably like that 30 to 45 range,
Yep.
where they've been through life, they've done some cool things, but they're feeling empty, and they're raising their hand.
Yeah.
Going, you know what, I've had enough. People from sports to some movie like Russell Brand,
Yeah.
that guy.
Oh yeah.
And other people, even in the community, business people, young business guys and entrepreneurs who are like, you know what, I got a problem and I need Jesus. I need something. There's something wrong inside of me.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that because we need more biblically aligned men to be who God made us to be as entrepreneurs, business guys, husbands, fathers, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, and even in the community,
Yeah.
right? And it's funny when people are like, hey, man, you shouldn't talk about that. I'm like, well, here, let me tell you something. Like, here's what the Bible boils down to. We were talking about this. Like, don't you think that a great foundation to start on, if we were going to start a business relationship and you really didn't believe in Christ and I did and I'm all about it, and you're like, man, I know it's kind of weird. He talks about it on the internet a lot.
Right.
If I sat down and said, hey, bro, here's the thing. Everything that we do, my foundation on my side of the fence is built in doing good things where I am.
Correct.
Mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially. So if I'm operating in alignment with that, that means I'm going to have integrity, honesty, transparency,
Yep.
an open door, pretty good work ethics. Like I'm going to operate with those things.
Yeah.
You can't disagree as a smart business guy that those are bad things, can you?
No, those are all what you're actually looking for.
Right.
You're looking for transparency. You're looking for communication. You're looking for clarity. And you know that's I will say this. I've had business partners in the past, and some of the breakdowns happen with envy. Some of the breakdowns
Sure.
like happen,
Pride.
jealousy, pride. All these things can erode it at business relationships. And if you were to marry those with a faith-based ethics system, a lot of those things are out the window.
They go out the window.
Yeah, because nobody's worried about who's getting the credit for this or that.
Yeah.
Not
a thing.
You're focused on the goal.
Yeah.
And the goal is a team goal.
Well,
So
and here's the cool thing too. The goal really is, hey, what does it matter if you're in a boat business or a water business or whatever it may be? God's given you a talent. Be a good steward of it.
amen.
And it's that simple,
Yeah.
right? And if you look at it from kind of the basics of that, it's like, okay, that's where we're going to operate. Then guess what? You're not only going to, because sometimes people get hung up in like, you shouldn't do things like we got to be like broke for Jesus kind of thing. And I'm like, you realize that God's given us talents. And if we use those talents that God's given us and we're good stewards of them, we can make an impact for the kingdom.
Amen.
Even in the Bible, it talks about using worldly wealth for the kingdom.
Yep.
Right. So, but that's part of being a good steward of ourselves financially.
Yeah.
But in order to be a good steward of ourselves financially, we've got to deal with this, right? Otherwise, we're out throwing it away on cocaine, alcohol, and
Gambling.
dumb stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, all right. So if we can get to that kind of basic level of agreement, well, then we can make a significant difference.
Right.
So I love all that stuff, man. One of the things I always ask people at the end, if you could give somebody a piece of advice, like you're like, you know what? In 3 minutes, if I had to sit down with 100,000 people, here's what I'd tell them. Because we get a lot of listeners and a lot of followers and that kind of stuff. So if somebody listened to this is, they're like, man, I got to watch that episode. What would you say?
For starters, I would say when you get up in the morning, pray.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you're not happy with what your life looks like, pray again. And if you have an idea to become an entrepreneur at any level, put that in action. Get started.
Yeah.
Because the sooner you get started, the sooner you're going to fail and learn and grow. And then try to align yourself with people who are more successful. If you know someone who's doing really well, go get their coffee for them.
Yeah.
Amen
to that.
Be around someone who has incredibly valuable information that you can soak up.
Yeah.
So you can implement it in your day to day. Mainly, get rid of the fear. Faith is faith for a reason.
Yeah.
Faith is
Faith and fear are opposites of each other.
Yeah, they if you really are moving in faith, you're not going to let anxiety or doubts or
Talk
worry
you out of it.
Yeah, all these fears that are dumped on you in any different, all these different forms. If you're moving in Christ's Spirit, things are going to work out for it. It could change directions on you.
Yeah.
But He's got a plan you're just adhering to.
Yeah.
So I'd say get started sooner and surround yourself with great people, and just don't quit.
Yeah.
You can't beat a man who doesn't quit.
So that's right. So I always say, you just got to outlast everybody else sometimes.
That's right.
You know, there's like 5,000 something real estate agents in Greenville, and all you have to do is work a little harder, work a little smarter,
Right.
ask the right questions, and outlast everybody else. When things get hard, level up.
Amen.
So funny part about that, pray, take action, watch who you surround yourself with, and then what was the last piece?
Don't give up.
Don't quit.
Yeah.
I got a bracelet I use
Don't
where it
give
says
up.
"Don't quit." That sounds like a T-shirt or a bumper sticker. It sounds like a good slogan right there.
Amen.
Pray, take action. I like it. All right. Well, thanks for being on the show today, man. I appreciate you coming out.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the tips. Appreciate you just being open, honest, and sharing. And let's go be the men God made us to be.
Thanks for having me.
See you, man.
Appreciate it.